and hopefully clear up some things that there's been a lot of question about. And I want to start today by reading a prepared statement about the homicide and some of the things about the timeline. On Sunday, March 15, 2015, the Buncombe County Sheriff's Office received a request for a welfare check at 87 Hookers Gap Road in the Lester community. Family members of JT and Christy Schoen-Codd had not heard from them and were concerned about their welfare. Patrol officers responded to the residence and ultimately met with a neighbor who had a key and were able to enter the residence and determine that there was evidence of suspicious activity. Patrol officers contacted the detective division and detectives responded. Detectives attempted to obtain contact information for friends and relatives and make some determination if the Codds could be located safely. When detectives were unable to locate the Codds, a missing persons investigation was started immediately. Detectives prepared and executed several search warrants and preservation orders for cell phone, telephone data. Detectives processed the residence throughout the evening and into the following morning. On Sunday evening, the Sheriff's Office received a report of suspicious activity on Donna Drive in the Candler community. Deputies responded and recovered items belonging to Christy Schoen-Codd. Detectives were able to identify Robert Jason Owen as the person who had left those items and interviewed him in the early morning hours of Monday, March 16th. On Monday, March 16th, detectives contacted the Lester Fire Department and a ground search was organized for the property at 87 Hookers Gap Road, and that's the Schoen residence, the Codd residence. The ground search was conducted the afternoon of Monday, March 16th, and nothing was found. Detectives were able to obtain a warrant for Robert Jason Owen on Monday, March 16th for the breaking and entering and larceny from 87 Hookers Gap Road. Robert Jason Owen was located and taken into custody that afternoon and interviewed by detectives. Information from that interview led detectives to prepare and execute several search warrants where they believed material to be human remains was recovered from the Owen residence at 8 Owen Cove Road in the Lester community. To date, detectives have prepared and executed multiple search warrants, conducted dozens of interviews, and seized numerous items of evidence. The human remains have been delivered to Wake Forest Baptist Medical Center for analysis. Robert Jason Owens has been charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder in the death of J.T. Cobb, Christy Schoen-Codd, and the murder of their unborn child. The investigation continues, and detectives are actively gathering information in relationship to the investigation. Now today, before you arrived, search warrants were returned to the Magistrate's office here in Buncombe County. I think many of you have received packets of what those search warrants contained. Once those search warrants are released, the information in those search warrants become public record. And what I'm here to do today is discuss some of the details around that without getting into extensive investigative details. Once again, let me stress, my number one goal at this point in time is to make sure that our agency follows up with a very detailed, thorough investigation, and also not to do anything that would prejudice or cause problems for the prosecution on down the road. So with those rules in place and thinking about moving forward and what our ultimate goal is, we will take questions shortly. But I do want to discuss a couple of things about the search warrants that you are going to find. And actually, probably the best way to do that is to go to a timeline. That I thought was here, contained in this packet. So I will go from the, Natalie, if you have that timeline, if you bring that to me, that will help me so we keep everything on track moving forward. Okay, this call started at 3:23 p.m. On Sunday afternoon. Bill Schoen, who is Christy's father, called in because she was supposed to be in Mississippi on Sunday, and they had not been able to make contact with her. So the Buncombe County Sheriff's Office went out to do a check on the welfare at the residence there at 87 Hooker's Gap Road. Deputies arrived and they were able to look and clear around the residence. Didn't see anything suspicious at the time. Shortly thereafter, we were able to locate a neighbor who had a key who came out to let us come into the residence, and we went in at that time. There were things when we entered the residence that let us know that there were probably some things that weren't quite as they should be when we went into the residence. So at that time, a missing persons report was filed, and we started trying to locate the cause. Later on that afternoon, late evening Sunday or early morning Monday, we received a call from an individual that reported suspicious activity around Donna Drive in Camden. They identified that someone had come out and in a very suspicious way had left things in a dumpster there at Donna Drive. We responded, and at that point in time, we were able to locate items which we knew belonged to Christy Schoenthal. We followed up from that point and were able to locate Robert Jason Owen and do an initial interview of him at that time. He did admit to taking items from the Codd residence, and some of those we had recovered from Donna Drive. About midday, we secured warrants for Mr. Owens and went out and attempted to serve the warrants. It took us some time till late afternoon to be able to locate him, which at that time he was arrested and brought here for an interview. We interviewed Mr. Owen, and after that interview, we went to the magistrate's office and secured 3 first-degree murder warrants for Christy Schoenthal, J.T. Codd, and also the unborn child. Some of the things that have been asked about bodies, recovering bodies, and those type details. And we've been very closed-lipped about that kind of thing, because what we did was we went to the residence and we were able to recover. Because of that interview, we were able to recover what we think are human remains. Part of those were recovered from a wood stove at that residence, and they were processed and packaged and have now been sent for forensic analysis. You will also discover, as you look through those packets with your search warrant packets, that we conducted an interview with Mr. Owen's wife, and through that interview you will see there some mention that he has admitted to killing J.T. Codd. Okay. So from that point, there's not really a whole lot of detail that we can get into investigatively. You will go through those search warrants and you will see items attached, and you will probably have further questions, but that's probably where we have to stop anything about investigative detail. I know you're probably going to want to ask me about how did he say, method of killing, motive, any kind of that thing, and those are things that we can't get into at this press conference. At this time, we're going to open it up for questions shortly, but I want to turn it over to District Attorney Todd Williams, and I think he has some statements that he wants to make.
Thank you, Sheriff. My name is Todd Williams. I'm the elected District Attorney of Buncombe County. I want to address first what the duties of a prosecutor, what a lawyer in North Carolina is charged with in ensuring fairness in our system. And I want to read directly from our rules of ethical conduct. Rule 3.8 requires that a prosecutor in all criminal cases shall refrain from making extrajudicial comments that have a substantial likelihood of heightening public condemnation of the accused. That's number one. And the second rule is Rule 3.6. A lawyer who is participating in litigation of a matter shall not make an extrajudicial statement that the lawyer knows will be disseminated by means of public communication and have a substantial likelihood of materially prejudicing an adjudicative proceeding. So those are our two rules of ethical conduct here in North Carolina that apply in every case that is filed in Buncombe County Courthouse, not just this case, but this is a guiding principle for our office in every case that's litigated criminally in Buncombe County. So I want you all to understand that. I am very limited, therefore, in what I could say. This is an ongoing investigation, and we want to be very careful about how we proceed. Next, I want to address the posture of these cases. As you've heard, there are 2 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of murder of an unborn child. The maximum possible punishment in all these cases is either life without parole. I didn't state that correctly, actually. In the 2 first-degree murder cases, there are 2 possible punishments: life without parole or death. In the murder of an unborn child case, the maximum possible punishment is life without parole. Now, North Carolina law gives the Office of the District Attorney discretion to declare a case capital or non-capital. It's my policy, it's the policy of the District Attorney's Office not to make that determination until we have all the information and the case has been submitted to our office for review. Now, as you've heard from Sheriff Duncan, items have been submitted for further laboratory analysis and investigation. We are subject to the timelines of that lab and those other investigative agencies at this juncture. I can't make any forecast as to when we'll be in a position to make the determination about how we proceed at this time. I do plan on making a careful, judicious review of the file once it is submitted. And at this time, we're serving as in an advisory capacity to law enforcement, which is part of our constitutional duty as the Office of the District Attorney. And at this time, that's my statement, and I'm pretty much going to let it stand there. Thank you.
And at this point in time, we'll open it up for questions. Yes, sir.
So in the warrants, it discusses how the suspect admitted hitting the male victim with a truck, but he also admitted destroying the body. But is there any, do you guys know how the wife why she was killed or how she was killed?
Those are parts of those investigative details that we can't discuss. You were correct. Part of what was released in the warrant was storing and destroying of bodies. And we knew there would be some question around why couldn't we say we had located the bodies? And I think those questions are at least in part answered now as to why we couldn't say that we absolutely had located and identified the cods earlier on.
And was this wood stove inside his home or another structure on that property?
Those are part of the details that we can't get into.
And I know this wasn't addressed, but the fire today.
Correct.
Is that where the wood stove was?
What I will say is there is a fire, there was a fire in the early AM of this morning that was worked by the Buncombe County Arson Task Force. That fire was located at the Owens residence. It was located on that curtilage. That was a building that was not his primary residence.
And you can't say whether the wood stove was in there?
No.
What was his demeanor when you guys brought him in for questioning?
Of course, he was arrested on a criminal warrant, and before we talked to him about anything, he was advised of his rights, which he waived. And he talked with us, and that's really all I can talk about as far as demeanor. But he sat down and he was forthcoming.
Can you discuss again what Owens admitted to?
I can discuss by way of what's contained in the search warrant, which is now public record. He did admit to taking the bodies, storing on his property, and destroying them. He did admit to that during his interview.
He didn't admit to killing them?
Those are parts of the details that I can't get into. What Sabian's talking about is during the wife's interview, she did, and what is contained in the search warrant, make the statement that he said that he had killed J.T. Cobb and had struck him with a vehicle. That's all things that are contained in the search warrants. Which you
Was that
guys have
reportedly
copies
an
of.
accident when he hit him with the truck, or was that deliberate?
That's not contained in the search warrant around the wife's statement, and I can't discuss what was talked about during the interview with Mr. Owens.
If I can, what's APD's involvement in this case?
Well, one thing I was asked early on, is this the same Robert Jason Owens that was looked at as a suspect during the Zeb Quinn homicide investigation? Is not our case, and I can't make reference to anything about that case, but what I